Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Welcome to V Talks. I'm your host, Veronica Brockwell. Well, have you ever walked in a room and you forgot why you did, or you can't find your keys, or you want to introduce a friend to someone and you forget the person's name, somebody that you've known forever? Well, this is a condition called brain fog, and it's a real thing. And my guest tonight, Dr. Michael Wild, is going to tell us all about what causes brain fog and what we can do to help remedy it. So please welcome to the V Talks some guy. What's your name again? Oh, Dr. Michael Wild. What? Who are you? And his dog, Jimmy.
No, come on now.
Ralphie.
So I'm Dr. Wild, and this is my trusty assistant, Ralphie, who is hopefully just going to behave tonight. He's usually pretty good. My dog.
And who am I?
Up. What's that?
Who am I?
Oh, you're Veronica. I know who you are. I've got you.
I know. We have fun.
Even I have suffered from brain fog on occasion. I think we all have, right?
All right.
Absolutely. And I chose this topic when we were just talking about, what might we want to share this time around, because I recently in my Facebook group done a poll just to see what kind of symptoms people were suffering from the most related to some of the things I help people with, just trying to get a kind of feeling for what are people really going through. And it was interesting because brain fog really won, so I was listing things like painful muscles and joints, difficulty losing or gaining weight, digestive issues, skin-related issues, eczema, rashes, all these different things that are related to the kind of work that I do to help people all the time. And brain fog, right, or memory loss was right up there, boy. It was number one, actually tied with body aches and pains. But those are the two things that were most often felt by people and that disturbed them, And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight because there are lots of reasons why you can experience brain fog, but there are some more common reasons and some things that you can do to help avoid that or actually try to fix it.
Well, it's interesting because, you could know somebody for, 20 years. And when sometimes you're in a situation where you want to introduce someone and you literally blank out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Happens all the time.
And you feel so terrible. And, but you're saying, yeah, this can happen. And not to feel bad about it. It's an actual condition that's going on.
Right. And you shouldn't feel bad about it, but you should recognize it. Now, something like that is pretty common. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment, because one of the things, and we'll get back to this, but one of the things that can cause that brain fog is stress, right? Now, if you're in a sudden situation where you were kind of like you ran into someone you weren't expecting, even though it might be a good thing, your stress level just jumped up a little bit because you're trying to remember, what do I know this person from? And, oh, yeah, what do we have in common? And then you stand next to this person next to you and suddenly you become stupid, right?
That's so funny.
And
sometimes it happens on this show.
That absolutely happens. It really does, and if any of you hear me say this, I've learned to have a little cover up for that kind of situation where I just look and I say, hey, you two are both adults. Introduce yourselves. I'll do something along those lines if I can't remember what that person's name is in that moment. And it might be because it caught me off guard. And when that happens, even though that's not a tremendous stress, if you're under a lot of stress on a regular basis, or there are certain other issues going on, it doesn't take a whole lot more to push you over the edge a little bit. And that sudden bit of stress can make you suddenly just lose your memory for a second. So that happens pretty commonly.
Exactly. Michael, before we go a little deeper into the topic, can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself
Sure. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Dr. Michael Wild. I practice a unique synergy of healing arts that I've learned over the years, basically guided by my life experiences. So I've been a chiropractic physician for about 31 years now, which is all about connecting brain to body through the nervous system to make sure that you have proper communication going on, or else nothing can work right in your body if your brain isn't coordinating that. I'm also a functional medicine practitioner, which is more about cellular interbody connections, cell to cell, gut brain, making sure that everything is communicating on a biochemical level more so than a neurologic level. And I also run a unique biohacking gym and spa called the Biohack Zone here in Richmond, Virginia. And biohacking means using scientific shortcuts to rapidly improve your health and performance. So I use tools and technology to shorten the learning curve for your body in various areas, including doing things like handling stress better, right? So there's technology you can use for that. And we can actually touch on that a little bit tonight too. And some of the things that you can try to do to improve the way your brain functions using some tools that are available to you.
That's fantastic. You always bring a lot to the show. All right.
Yeah, a little too much sometimes. It's hard to get me to stop talking, right?
You're very smart. And I love doing the show with you because you're so smart. I don't have to do a lot of prep work because I really don't have a lot to contribute.
You make me feel really good about myself. I got to tell you that.
That's true. I'm like everybody else. We're like, wow, that's so cool. All right. Let's get going here. So we are going to talk about the topic of brain fog.
Let's do it. So what is brain fog, right? We've all probably heard the term, and you did a great little introduction just now, kind of explaining some of the things we experience when we have what we consider brain fog. So brain fog is not an actual medical condition or diagnosis in of itself. It's a group of symptoms that affect our ability to think clearly, right? And that can be characterized by typical things like difficulty concentrating, forgetfulness, confusion, lack of mental clarity, slow or sluggish thinking, feeling easily distracted, like even when there's no distraction, you find your mind wandering, difficult to put words in your mouth, right? You're looking for that word. It's a simple word and you just can't find the word. And someone says it, and you're like, oh my God, of course. Yeah. I think that's had to have happened to all of us at some time or another, but it becomes more concerning when it's happening with a lot of regularity, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't worry about the one-offs, every now and then that happens, right? Like you said, you could forget where you put the keys, even though they're still in your hand, right? With that.
Where's my phone?
Right. I think I've actually done that. I can't find my phone. I better call it from my phone. No.
From my phone.
Right. And again, that all happens when there's a lot on our mind, that can happen. And again, that goes back to that stress factor.
Sure.
So when there's a lot happening, we're going to get a little bit more into some of the ways in which stress does that to you. But stress is very real, right?
Yeah.
Emotional stress, prolonged physical stress, pain, different things that can affect us, can affect our neurochemistry and affect the blood flow to our brain, which can then in turn lead to brain fog. And again, it's not the one-off things we care about. It's when we're starting to notice this on a really regular basis, or we start to become concerned that the memory is starting to fade. We all have a lifespan, and we hope within that lifespan, let's all hope we live to be 100, and we have a great health span where we're healthy through all those years physically, but we also want to be healthy mentally, right? And we call that our brain span. So we want our brain span to match our lifespan so that we're sharp throughout all our days, right? We don't want to not remember the last 30 years of our life, right? Or those who are near and dear to our heart. So it's real important to try to work on improving our brain function, right? Whenever we can. And there's different ways in which we can do that, right? And I know that I actually jotted on a couple of notes for myself here because there's a lot to remember, okay? And I don't want to forget some of these things. So the first thing I want to talk about is how the lack of certain nutrients or nutrient deficiencies can cause brain fog, right? So any kind of malnutrition, obviously, will affect the function of all of your cells, right? So I'm not talking about malnutrition where we're actually starving kind of nutrient deficiencies. I'm talking about when we may be low in one or more particular nutrients, and those nutrients tend to get low because when we are stressed, our body uses them up faster, right? Because these are things that help in our healing and repair process and in our coping mechanisms. So when we are excessively stressed emotionally, especially stressed physically, like are trying to repair, I have a shoulder injury right now. I'm wearing a shoulder brace. My body's trying to work on that. So there's a lot of energy and healing going towards that, right? Well, certain nutrients play a larger role than others in leading to brain fog. And one right off the bat is vitamin D. Now, you've heard us talk about that before out here, right? So we know vitamin D is
every
important
show.
right? Somehow or another, we're
Every
going to talk about certain key things over and over because they relate to just about everything, right?
I know.
So vitamin D, as we know, is a very important immune system controller for healing and repair. So if your vitamin D is low, one of the things that's going to happen is you're not going to be able to heal and repair as efficiently. That then is going to drain a lot more of the energy that your cells are producing. And if your cells get drained of the energy they're trying to produce because more of it's trying to go to heal and repair, you actually have less in reserves for real clear brain function. Because guess what organ or tissue in your body uses pretty much the majority of the energy in your body? Your brain, right? So your brain is extremely energy intensive for its activities. And so if your energy is being drained and used in other areas like prolonged healing and repair, and if you're low on vitamin D, it's really kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel there to get things going. That's going to take energy away from your brain. All right. Vitamin D is also important for calcium transfer. And this is important for what we call calcium channels and ionic flow through your cell membranes. So if you can't move your calcium around properly, and vitamin D helps direct that, then you can't get nutrients in and waste out as well, because little doors in your cell membranes don't open and close the way they're supposed to, including the cells in your brain, which are called neurons, right? Mm-hmm. So again, if we can't feed our brain cells properly, we're going to have a problem, right? So vitamin D helps to control that, right? Also, it's interesting that low levels of vitamin D are also highly associated with depression, anxiety, and overall body inflammation, right? And we're going to talk more about the role of inflammation in just a moment, right? But vitamin D contributes to all these things, all right? The next nutrient that we want to talk about are B vitamins, especially B12. And part of that goes right along to the same thing we were talking about with vitamin D with energy production, right? But just in a different way. So remember, we've talked in the past about inside our cells, we have a tiny organ or organelle that is where the energy production really gets created or takes place. And it's called the mitochondria, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
Just check, see if you got brain fog.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So if you remember the mitochondria,
I had to spell it out once.
Yeah. Right. So
people don't know.
Every cell in your body, except for red blood cells, contain mitochondria, from hundreds to thousands of them. And mitochondria are the energy factories. This is where your food and your oxygen come together to actually create energy for your cells to be alive and to do their job and for you to think clearly and everything your body needs every moment of every day, right? And if you don't make that energy, your cells slow down, become sickly, eventually die, and if enough cells die, you die, right? So we need to make sure that energy's up, and B12 is extremely important in that energy production, which is why when people are feeling really sluggish or have chronic fatigue, they may even get B12 injections, and that makes them feel more energized.
Yeah.
That's because the B12 is part of the biochemical process, and I'm making this circle motion here because it's called the citric acid or Krebs cycle, right? And in there, our fuel comes in, our oxygen comes in, and they come together with different nutrients like B12 and other B vitamins, coenzyme Q10, different things that go into that spiral that end up kind of like spinning the engine and spitting out the energy. So we need to have an adequate amount of B12 in our body to have adequate brain function and clear memory, thinking, and even judgment, right? It comes down to that. And studies have shown that when you give people B12 supplementation, or if they get more from their diet, and a great place to get B vitamins, by the way, is nutritional yeast. So yeast in general, even brewer's yeast, is rich in B vitamins. And there are actually 27 B vitamins altogether. Most people are not aware of that because we only see the same, 5 B vitamins we see in our synthetic B vitamin supplement. But there are actually more found in nature, and they're meant to be used together. But B12 is more that energizing one, and the one that gets that sharpness coming back, right? So nutritional yeast flakes, which kind of taste kind of nutty, and you can sprinkle them like on a salad. That's a great place to get your B vitamins in general, right? Now, the next nutrient we want to talk about is iron. Now, iron is extremely important. You might be aware of the fact that when people don't have enough iron, their red blood cells break down, right? And we call it iron deficiency anemia. Mm-hmm. And iron's important because it maintains the integrity of not only the red blood cells themselves, but helps in their oxygen carrying capability. And so we have to have enough iron in our hemoglobin, which is the protein that holds the oxygen inside the red blood cell, to carry it to our brain.
Yeah.
So if our brain is low on oxygen, guess what happens, right? You start not thinking too clearly, right? What would happen if you were being starved of oxygen? You would become panicked at first, and then you would become very disoriented, right? Your brain cannot work without oxygen. And iron is extremely important and necessary in the oxygen carrying capabilities of your cells. Now, iron can also, it's a double-edged sword. Like a lot of things, kind of the saying is the dose makes the poison, right? A little bit's good, a little not enough isn't good, and too much isn't good, right?
Okay.
We need to have that happy medium in there. We want our iron within a normal range. Too much iron can actually invite disease processes and actually accelerate the formation of some chronic diseases because it starts to interfere with our cellular function. So I don't really recommend usually supplementing with a lot of iron because you can easily overdo it, right? And believe it or not, calcium is another one. We all think about, oh, we all need calcium. We do, but it's best to get these things from food sources, really, unless you are really deficient and your blood work says so. And then you can take supplementation, but you also want to monitor that to be within appropriate ranges because too much calcium can be very damaging to your body and shut off those doorways within the cells like we were talking about, right? Not enough could be an issue. Too much could be an issue, right? Well, a good source of iron is really animal-based products, right? Meat, red meat particularly, very rich in iron. So it's sometimes a little bit tough for vegetarians or vegans to get enough iron, and they may need to supplement with that because it's not very easy to get that from plant sources, unfortunately, right? So I'm not saying you have to eat a tremendous amount of meat, but you may want to make sure you have a little bit in there to get these levels up. The cleaner the meat, the more organic the meat, of course, the healthier and safer it is for you. So I don't recommend just filling up on commercially raised antibiotic and hormone-laden meat that's been force-fed grains loaded with pesticides and herbicides and things that are actually very toxic to your system because that can lead to brain fog, right? But if we get, you get a good organic meat, that's fantastic, right? Grass-fed organic meat has a very different chemical makeup than commercially grain-raised animals do. So that's something that's really important. And they find that when you're too low in iron and the blood itself, you could develop anemia, right? And the blood cells start to break down, and then you can't carry the oxygen there. That's going to lead to problems in memory, attention, behavior. All these things are associated with brain fog, all right? The next nutrient I want to talk about, which you've also heard me talk about before, is omega-3 fatty acids, right?
So important.
So important. And
I had no idea.
Most people don't.
How important. I mean, it is.
We hear, you ever hear eat fish? It's brain food. You ever heard that? Right? I remember my grandmother saying that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because, people noticed that the more people ate fish, the sharper their brain was, right? And that's mainly because of the omega-3 fatty acids that comes from that fish. The omega-3 fatty acids are a type of essential fatty acid. Your body makes some of them, but it doesn't make a lot. So it's really important that you do get it from your diet. And it is mostly the anti-inflammatory portion of the fats that make up every cell membrane in your body and every neuron in your brain, right? And your brain is particularly heavy in fats. Your brain's mostly cholesterol and fats. And so you want to have a good balance of these anti-inflammatory omega-3s up in your brain. And there's two that are really important called DHA and EPA. And DHA is even mostly or more important for brain function, okay, and for mental clarity and neurologic connectivity throughout your body, right? EPA helps with brain function in terms of emotional stability, heart health, things like that. But DHA is more about the structure of your brain cells and making sure that those neurons have structural integrity so they don't crumble and they can connect with each other well, right? Now, I find that when I check people for their omega-3 fatty acid status, most people are woefully deficient. Right?
I was very bad.
Yeah, this is something that is really in epidemic proportions, but no one's being taught about it. And to me, I think having a proper omega-3, omega-6 ratio test, omega-6s are the pro-inflammatory fatty acids, the ones that will create more inflammation in your cell membranes. You do need some of them. They're very important to your cells, but it's all about balance, right? So if your omega-3s are really low, then the omega-6s tend to ride high because they're no longer in check. And that creates a lot of inflammation in your brain. And when you have a lot of inflammation in your brain, you're going to lead to a lot of dysfunction in your brain. And we'll talk about that in a sec. So what's a good amount of omega-3s, right? How much should you take? Well, that really depends on the person, right? And I find most people, even if they're taking supplements, are not taking nearly enough, which is why I really recommend you get tested, right? And if you're getting blood work done from your regular doctor, ask they add something called an omega check to it. And the omega check is a specific process done to look at how much omega-3s are in your cell membranes and what the ratios are to those other fats that could be problematic and could create more brain fog, right? So omega-3s, especially DHA, can help stop brain fog and prevent it, whereas more of the omega-6s, arachidonic acid, palmitic acid, these different kinds of fats tend to raise damage to your cell membranes and create more inflammation in your brain. All right. So ask your doctor to run that test. And if your doctor doesn't know how to interpret that test, because a lot of doctors don't do it because they don't know what to do about it, okay, feel free to give me a call. I always offer a free discovery call where you can pick my brain and I can give you a little bit more information about what you should be doing in that regard, right? So as we said before, low vitamin D is related to depression. So is low omega-3, right?
Yeah.
Depression and anxiety, especially, and then leading to brain fog, right? Yeah. So real important to get that level up there, all right? Some other nutrients that have been found to be very important when it comes to brain fog is magnesium, right? And magnesium is another one of those that your body uses up quickly when you're under duress, right? Whether it's emotional stress or physical stress, meaning pain, okay? Primarily chronic pain. So when you have these excessive stresses in your body, magnesium is part of the healing mechanisms. It's soothing and calming to your nervous system, soothing and calming to your muscular system. So muscle spasms, things like that. Chronic pain can be related to low magnesium, all right? And magnesium performs over 300 known functions in your body. Very, very important to your overall health, especially your brain health. Deficiency of magnesium has been found to be linked to cognitive decline in general, not just brain fog, right? So important. It's also kind of a key conductor inside your brain cells. Another nutrient is vitamin C, okay? So vitamin C, we know when we think of vitamin C, it's usually in that category of nutrients that we take because we call it, and maybe you know the answer to this, an anti-what? Vitamin C is an antioxidant, right?
Oh, of course, right? Because we put it everywhere.
Right. So
you take it,
right. You put it on, it's in serums for your skin. We take it internally, right? It's added to all of our sports drinks and different things because we know it's good for us. Vitamin C is a very important to the function of your immune system and for cellular functioning again. And it's also, as I just said, a strong antioxidant, right? So what does that mean? What's antioxidants? Well, oxidation is a biochemical process that occurs. It's a necessary part of metabolism. Every time your mitochondria are making that energy, it's like they're burning fuel, right? To create that energy. Just like if you burned wood to create the energy or the heat that you feel come off that, right? And the light that you see, those are forms of energy. Well, your body is kind of burning the fuel that we gave it in terms of our food and adding oxygen, just like if you were making that, that fire pit in the backyard. Yeah. And that is creating an oxidative process that's generating energy that we call metabolism, right? And when we have a higher metabolism, we burn up our energy faster. So we tend to kind of melt off our fat and our reserve stores to do that. So generally people with a higher metabolism tend to look thinner. People with slower metabolism, where that process is sluggish, don't burn through their fuel. And fat is stored fuel in your body as well as stored toxins, right? So we kind of see how those go together. Well, what happens when we build that fire, right? In our fire pit? What's a byproduct of that gets in your eyes that's irritating? Smoke, right? Yeah. So the oxidative process kicks off its smoke, which is called free radicals, right? Yeah. And you've heard me talk about that before as well, where free radicals are we think of them as the bad guys. Now, again, all this is kind of necessary for cellular function. So this has to happen, all right? You don't want to stop it altogether or you die, all right? But we don't want it going out of control. We don't want there being more bad stuff than there is good, right? So when this happens and you're kicking out all these free radicals, these are kind of like damaged molecules that are looking to complete themselves. And so the analogy I use, I know I've used this before with you, it's kind of like a zombie who has his arm ripped off, and he sees you walking down the street, he thinks your arm looks like it'll be a good fit, so he rips your arm off and tries to stick it on, but now you don't have an arm. So you walk down the street and you rip off the next guy's arm and stick it on, but now he doesn't have an arm. And it keeps cascading, right?
Yeah.
So free radicals try to complete themselves by ripping apart other healthy molecules within your body, but then that becomes a free radical, and this, it just keeps going on and on. And that is what damages the cell. The molecules are making up the cells, right? Mm-hmm. Which are making up the tissues, the organs and glands, and so on. So as that process continues, the cells begin to break down, the tissue begins to break down. And that is part of the aging process, right? And so the more this happens, the faster this happens, the faster you age. So there are a number of things that can speed up that too much for too long, creating too much smoke. And if your body doesn't know how to process that smoke properly, if it can't handle the free radicals properly, then things age too fast, cells break down, including the neurons in your brain. So when that happens here, brain fog is a very common sign of this oxidative damage happening in your brain. All right. So we can measure this through different tests and actually see what's coming out in your urine that tells us how much oxidative damage is actually happening inside your cells. So it's a great test for that, where I can get a good handle on, is your body doing this in a normal range, or are you really in trouble here? Because then I can tell you how to fix that. And part of fixing that is really upping those antioxidants, right? Yeah. So vitamin C is an antioxidant. What that means is it comes in and helps control that process, right? So there's always this communication between atoms and molecules and cells that's called oxidation reduction. And it's kind of transferring little elements back and forth to each other as a means of communication. So as that process takes place, if the oxidation gets too high versus the reduction, we're going to have trouble, right? Things are going to break down. So vitamin C is a great one. Actually, vitamin E is a great antioxidant as well. And there's other nutrients and herbs that can do that too. So let's get a little bit more into another one here, which is an amino acid called choline, right?
Oh.
And choline is something you often don't hear a lot about either, right?
I don't think you've ever discussed that one.
So choline is a nutrient that's also found in meats a lot of time, other foods as well, but it's easier to get into your body that way. And if you're low on choline, you're going to have problems with cognitive processing, right? Processing speed, right? Trying to take in information and get an answer, right? And spit it back out. That's going to be affected, as well as your memory. Okay. So, that's CHOLINE.
I'm just looking it up. I didn't put it up.
Right.
Oh, all kinds of supplements.
Right. So
there we are. Yeah.
One of the main supplements we take to replenish that's called phosphatidylcholine. Right.
Okay. But and if you can only get it in meat, otherwise, are there any other, because we were talking about iron and things like that. Source. You can get it. You can get iron in, spinach and
it's mostly animal products. Eggs are a really good source.
Okay.
Right? So those are the things I usually go to for that.
Oh, yep. I see that now. Eggs.
Right?
Yeah. Eat eggs.
Yep. They're a really good source of that. So let's talk now, besides the nutrients and being deficient in nutrients, what are some other things that can contribute to brain fog that you might be doing on a regular basis and not realize it? So let's talk about lifestyle factors, right? So one of the biggest lifestyle factors
we were laughing about this earlier. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
We were saying that certain people like to have certain lifestyle factors that might contribute to brain fog, well, in one way or another, right? But one big brain factor is not getting enough sleep.
Right.
Right. So when you don't sleep enough, your brain gets excessively stressed, right? And you really start to lose your memory pretty quickly if you don't sleep enough. And especially if you're low in any of those energy reserves we talked about, or there's high oxidative stress going on, or those nutrients are deficient, you're really going to have a hard time maintaining clarity of focus and memory if you don't sleep enough. All right. And it becomes a catch-22 in a sense, because when you're deficient in certain nutrients, it's difficult to sleep. Right.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If you're not, that imbalance could be causing you not to sleep. And then you're on this vicious cycle of not sleeping and having brain fog and feeling awful.
Exactly. So that
Yeah.
that decreased sleep, sleep is when your body and your brain does a majority of its healing and repair,
Mm-hmm.
right? When it's not using its energy for everything during the day that we have to do, and it can focus that energy on the most energy intensive processes, which are healing, repairing any of the damaged tissue from the oxidative damage from normal metabolism that happened all day long, right?
Right.
And also, when you get into your deepest levels of sleep, your body flushes out toxins out of your brain. It actually draws blood out of your brain and fills up your brain with more of the cerebrospinal fluid in the cavities of your brain and washes the cells out. It's actually called brainwashing, right? So when that happens during our deepest levels of sleep and we have that brainwashing effect, we're actually clearing out a lot of the toxic byproducts that build up as a result of this brain function and metabolism. And when that doesn't happen well, then certain protein byproducts of this metabolism tend to kind of gunk up the mechanisms up there, right?
Yeah.
And you may have heard of some things like tau proteins. You may have heard that term before because it's highly associated with Alzheimer's, right? And dementia in general. So it's not that tau proteins aren't supposed to be found there, but when they build up too much, now we have an issue, right? So we have a difficulty with our brain's mechanisms of what we call proper protein folding, which is a process that goes on to kind of package things away the way they're supposed to, right? So if we're not folding our proteins properly and we have too much gunked up excess proteins forming because we're not getting enough healing or repair time in our sleep, that's going to take a big toll on your brain. And so,
Michael, is that something that, just that we're on that topic of Alzheimer's and this process, is that something that you can actually detoxify?
You can.
And reverse some of that damage?
You absolutely can. Most doctors don't know about it, I'll say, right? Okay. And when you're talking about detoxifying, most detoxification processes focus on what we call downstream detoxification, what I call the low-hanging fruit, right? The stuff that is floating in your blood, the stuff that's in your GI tract that's not been fully absorbed yet, and helping flush that stuff out. And that's important, right? You want to help that stuff move along, and your body uses its natural detoxification processes to do that through your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, your blood, your lymph, your skin. These are all mechanisms used to get stuff out that doesn't belong, right? But what happens once those toxins have already crossed through the gut, gotten into the cells, are deeply embedded in the cells, have gotten through the blood up, and because of certain toxins being present, enable the blood-brain barrier to break down. The blood-brain barrier is, think of it as a single wall of cells, astrocytes in your brain, that are a defensive fence to keep out the bad guys, right? Now, the problem is certain toxins can drop that blood-brain barrier down, like kind of pulling pickets off the fence, right? And now toxins can get through, and other things can seep through that shouldn't normally be allowed to get through. Other toxins, heavy metals like mercury, bacteria, right? Things in your bloodstream that should never be allowed into your brain, because if it gets there, we can have some really serious problems, right? So certain toxins, certain chemicals found in the environment, certain heavy metals can disrupt that blood-brain barrier and then let the toxins in. So in order to get to those and get to the ones that are deeply embedded in your cells, you have to take detox to another level. And I call that upstream, right? Getting to where it's really kind of at the source. So you want to support downstream and upstream to do that right. And I remember we actually did an episode all about that, where we went into a lot more detail. So we can refer people back to that to learn more about that, because we talked for an hour or more just about that.
It may have been two.
I do tend to get a little.
Well, we've had some long ones. We've been doing this a long time.
I know we have,
we're being better.
I try to watch the clock, right?
We've been better.
We can just get into great conversations, and we can just keep going.
Yeah, just to keep going. We do it live. There's no editing.
I know, it's true. Sometimes
it's because I'm lazy. People are like, "Why did you go live?" Oh my God! I'm like, "Because I'm lazy. I don't feel like editing." It's all right.
Absolutely.
There's no brain fog here.
No brain fog here. We're doing okay. And if we we trip on a few words, hey, we're human too.
It's all right.
We do it all the time, and I go back and watch. I go, did I really just say that?
I don't even want to talk about it. It's so bad sometimes. Oh my God.
But hey, that's
All right. So we're
real.
still on lifestyle factors,
All
right?
right. So
So there are plenty. And I'm
we
sorry
talked
I
about sleep.
digressed because I
All right. I got to pull you back. I
I
got
know,
one
right?
hand holding Ralphie here, so I can only pull you back with one hand here.
That's right.
All right.
Lifestyle.
So sleep,
Yeah.
they do say that the average sleep that the normal brain needs is about 7 to 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
Of good quality sleep. So you don't want to be up and down throughout the night for that. That's not as beneficial. Now, some of the research does show that that's not as harmful as we once thought it was. You may feel tired, but your body's still getting, so much repair being done. But you really want to try to get, if you can, 7 good quality hours of sleep at least, or if not 8. And for most people, that means going to bed around 10 o'clock. That's the natural circadian rhythms for most bodies. And that makes a big difference as to light and dark outside. And when our body's secreting different hormones, melatonin to bring us into a sleep cycle, bringing our cortisol back down. So these are the things that should happen, right? Now, if you're finding that your body revs up at night and you can't sleep and you can't turn your brain off, there's some other things going on there where your rhythms are off and your stress glands are too hyperactive. And that's something that you may need some help with, right? And that's something that I help people with as well. But that's to get you back in a normal cycle. So you should wake up in the morning, right, with get up and go. And throughout the day, you should slowly go down until nighttime. It's time to go to sleep. You should feel tired and you should fall asleep right away. So ideally, you should be falling asleep really within minutes, not more than 10 minutes. Once your head hits that pillow.
I do. I have to say, I am so blessed. I have a lot of issues.
I hit that pillow and boom.
I have a lot of issues, but sleeping is not one of them.
You're 9 issues, sleep ain't one. All right.
But I'm up early. Like, I don't know that I sleep 7 or 8 hours straight. I'm not sure. But when I go to sleep, it's hard.
Yeah.
I'm in, and then I just wake up when the sun shines. I wake up early.
Yep. And that's good. And I have a built-in alarm clock in my bedroom, my 2 dogs. So when the sun comes around the blinds there, they're right over here licking my face. They're ready to go. So whether I want to get up or not, it's time to get up. Right.
Yeah. No, I feel really bad for people that struggle with sleep because I know that I can't really relate to that. And I'm sure it's difficult. So, all right. Lifestyle.
The next thing is chronic stress that we've been talking about, right?
Yeah.
Now here, both chronic pain-related physical stress and chronic emotional stress can both do the same thing to you, which is raise your stress hormone called cortisol, right? Yep. So we have multiple hormones our adrenal glands make for us, adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine, different things that our body uses. Our adrenal glands also make some of our sex hormones, testosterone and estrogen. But the main thing we think about there is our cortisol, right? So when we are overly stimulated due to excessive stress, our cortisol is supposed to go up when we need it in a state of stress to help our body's processes rev up to meet the demand, right? Blood pressure up, blood pumping to our arms and legs, take care of whatever we have to take care of. But that should then quickly drop back down and go back into a balance with our body so that we don't remain in that elevated cortisol state. When we remain in that elevated cortisol state, that becomes damaging because it alters our other hormones, including our insulin and its ability for our blood sugar to get into our cells, right? So again, if cortisol is too high, it's going to affect metabolism in different ways. Not only insulin, but cortisol will also affect your thyroid hormone, right? And thyroid hormone is one of the strongest metabolic hormones you have. It controls part of the pace and rate at which that wheel is spinning in the mitochondria, right? So when someone has hypothyroidism, they tend to feel sluggish. Their tissues tend to break down, right? Their hair starts to fall out. Their skin starts to get dry because things are not repairing the way they should, right? Well, excess cortisol in your bloodstream wraps around your active thyroid hormone, which is called T3. And when it wraps around that active thyroid hormone, it creates what we call reverse T3, which is a mirror image of the healthy hormone. So to your brain, it almost looks the same. It's just inverted. The problem that happens is that mirror image hormone that's wrapped in the cortisol now goes in and plugs into your cell receptors, and your body's not able to actually get the real active thyroid hormone because the imposter got in there, right? So when that happens and the excess cortisol causes this switch to occur, then you can't use your metabolic hormone. So your thyroid could be making it perfectly well. Your insulin levels could be great. But when this starts to happen and causes disturbance to the cell membranes and the receptors that are listening for those hormones, we're going to have a problem because the cells aren't going to be able to use the hormones. So that's one way in which excessive cortisol can impact us by altering our sugar metabolism.
Okay.
Now, there's, of course, people can get brain fog from being on medications, especially things like chemo, right? I'm not talking about that kind of brain fog. That is chemically induced from medications. And really what stops that is getting off those drugs, right? But there are other conditions besides cancer and chemo. There are other conditions that can cause brain fog, right? A common one is fibromyalgia, right?
Yeah.
Now, fibromyalgia is another one of these kind of like brain fog. To me, it's not truly a medical diagnosis as much as it is a kind of a description of a grouping of symptoms, right? So fibromyalgia is kind of, to me, it's kind of like saying, I have sore muscle and sore joint syndrome. Okay, why? Right? So it describes the fact that your tissues are becoming fibrous and painful. But what's really due to is chronic inflammation and chronic toxicity is what I've found, right? And these things, again, disrupting the cellular repair mechanisms. Your muscles are breaking down all day long and they can't repair properly and develop too much scar tissue, too much lactic acid. We're going to have a lot of painful points, a lot of trigger points around our body. And it's also going to be associated with fatigue, right? And fibromyalgia shows it all the time. So one of the signs of fibromyalgia, or one of the symptoms, is you develop brain fog along with that. As I said earlier, depression, anxiety, these things also, because it's disrupting the cellular mechanisms in the brain. These depression and anxiety are commonly due to, also taking a step back, inflammation and toxicity, right? Because these things interfere with the ability for your brain's neurotransmitters, like serotonin and dopamine, to properly hit the receptors in the brain. And those are some of the hormones our brain uses to maintain an even keel and not get anxious and to not get depressed, and our happy hormones, our feel-good hormones, right? We also know some of those, like dopamine, also control some movement patterns of our body and is associated with things like Parkinson's, right? So when we have disturbances in our brain due to inflammation and toxicity, this is going to lead to biochemical changes that can lead to depression, anxiety, which then also can cause you not to eat very well, right? When you're in those states, you may end up with nutrient deficiencies. And again, things can spiral. You also tend not to sleep as well, right? You may want to stay in bed, but you tend not to really get good sleep, right? So all these things keep going. As I just said before, another condition that can be related to this is hypothyroidism, right? Because of that connection we just talked about. Dehydration, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you're not getting enough water in those tissues, they're going to suffer, right? So when we're dehydrated, you can typically begin to have confusion, especially if it's significant dehydration, right? But well, before that, you'll just start getting forgetful and not realize you're even dehydrated, right? One quick little thing you can do to see if you're dehydrated, obviously, when you look at your urine, it should be more towards the clear side, not extremely concentrated, very dark yellow or getting closer to almost a brown. That is indicating that significant dehydration, right? So you want to get more fluid into your body. And ideally, you want that to be purified water with minerals in it, right? Because the minerals actually help the cells absorb the water. You need minerals to carry those water molecules across the cell membranes more efficiently. So it's not a great idea to drink a lot of distilled water because it doesn't have the minerals in it, right? But purified water, reverse osmosis purified water is best, taking out a lot of those toxins that can cause this damage to your cells and to your neurons in your brain. And instead, having minerals to get that back in. And you can get your minerals from your diet if you have a wide variety of various multicolored veggies. You're going to get a lot of good minerals from that. I find most people don't do that. A lot of people have their favorite veggies and kind of eat the same three over and over. Don't have a lot of wide variety in that. Also not a lot of color spectrum in there, which represents different vitamins and minerals. We tend to eat the same, green beans or spinach or whatever our favorite is over and over, carrots, right? Things like that. So those can be helpful, but they're not going to be the widest spectrum. So you do want to supplement with minerals. I personally filter my water using our reverse osmosis system to take the toxins out, and then I add liquid minerals right back into that water. So when I drink it, it's already mixed right in. It's there, ready to go. Right? There's different ways you can do that.
And what is your thought on the smart water?
So smart water is good in the sense that it contains some of the basic minerals to allow that rehydration, right? That's why they also call it like alkaline water, because those minerals are raising the alkalinity. Now, alkaline water, when you drink it, doesn't truly make your tissues instantly alkaline, right? So it doesn't work quite that way. But eating green leafy vegetables will actually make you more alkaline and get more of those healthy minerals in you. But in general, things like smart water, alkaline waters are going to have those minerals to help get that across. And mineral water, right? It says it right in the name, right?
Right.
So mineral water is kind of my preferred thing, where it's in its natural state, tends to have more of a balance of the minerals that you want in there. Okay. You can also do things like add a pinch of Himalayan salt or Celtic sea salt, which is not just sodium chloride, right? American table salt is straight sodium chloride, which is kind of a natural. You don't find that anywhere in nature where it's isolated sodium chloride like that. We produce that because it's cheap, it's easy, and it's very salty, so we like the taste. But when you get salt in nature, like Himalayan salt or Celtic sea salt, things like that, they have a much wider spectrum of minerals found in there. And generally, if you go into like a health food store, they might even have barrels of different salts. I've seen that in different stores. And they come in different colors, right? Some are kind of yellowish, some are pink, some are almost more purple. These contain different mineral concentrations in them, right? So a little pinch of that in your water in a day can be helpful, and putting a little pinch on your food to get that mineralization back.
We have a couple of questions actually regarding conditions. I have one here that says, what about Lyme brain fog?
Again, right? So Lyme is absolutely a big condition that can cause that. And why? What does Lyme do? Lyme creates inflammation throughout your nervous system, right? And throughout your joints and your body. Neurological Lyme brain fog, same kind of thing, right? So these are all things that at their core are anchored in inflammation once again. So I know I sound like a broken record every time I talk about this, but it's so pervasive. It affects so many things. This, in this case, is being caused by an organism that irritated the body. The body created an immune attack against, but the organism is really good at hunkering down, can be hidden, and the body can then end up with problems where it's trying to fight this over and over. So it becomes this chronic infection that your body can't really rid itself of very well, right? And again, when it's lowering its energy because it's fighting this big battle, it opens the door to then co-infections. Other things that your immune system would normally be able to fight off can start to get in because your nervous system and your immune system are distracted fighting this other guy, right? So when people have Lyme for longer periods of time, we tend to see these co-infections start to come about, and they succumb to more parasitic infections. We all have parasites in our body, whether you realize it or not. But most of the time, your immune system's keeping them in check, right? Your digestive system's breaking them down, destroying them. And it happens all the time, right? It's in the food, it's in the air we breathe, it's in the soil, right? And we need microorganisms and we need these things, right? But we want to kind of keep them in check. When you have things like Lyme, where your body is fighting that on such a great level all the time, it's easier for you to get parasitic infections because your defenses go down, right? Talking about infections and things that you might catch, as we say, how about the big one that happened in the last few years, right? COVID-19. So there's been a lot of people complaining of brain fog when they had COVID-19, especially after the fact, right? As part of that long COVID that you hear about, a long haul COVID, where your body is continuing to try to fight this inflammatory process, much like Lyme, right?
I mean, I had it.
Right?
I mean, I had the long haul. I was, it was inflammation in my brain. Remember that whole thing in my ears? Same.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And if you do the right things, like we're talking about with the right nutrients, especially the proper amount of essential fatty acids, according to what your blood work shows, really, really important to healing your brain. Right. Some other cool tools that I use in my office that you probably wouldn't have access to, but laser therapy. Laser therapy is so helpful to brain function and reconnecting the synapses in your brain. And the right frequency of laser, which is actually a very low level laser. Stronger is not better for this purpose. A very low frequency wave of laser goes through the bone, gets into the brain tissue, and actually causes the neurons that are damaged or inflamed to heal faster and to grow new dendrites or nerve endings and to connect to each other better. So there's better synaptic communication between the neurons. And it's actually, it happens fast, right?
You have this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have this when I was visiting?
Yeah, I don't know if I probably showed it to you, but it's part of my chiropractic treatments. Anytime someone comes to see me for a chiropractic visit, they get a laser treatment every time as part of that treatment. It's just part of what I do, right? because
Oh,
laser
wow.
in general reduces inflammation very quickly and speeds up the healing process very quickly.
Sure.
Right. But many people choose to do it in their brain because it upregulates the entire brain and body function, including helping to clear out brain fog. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a great tool for that. Of course, neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's and dementia, a telltale sign of that is increasing brain fog, right? So that, of course, is something that we can all recognize with that. So the next thing I want to talk about is, again, as we've been kind of talking about over and over throughout the evening, because I can't really get away from it, is inflammation in general, right? So anything that creates that inflammation at a high enough level long enough in your body will lead to a condition called leaky brain, right? Or also known as a mind on fire. There's another way of describing it, right?
So like leaky gut, you have
Yes,
leaky
right?
brain.
So you've heard of leaky gut. Now,
Okay,
leaky gut.
this is new to me.
Okay. Now I know that we've only got about 7 minutes left in our hour, so I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I'll wrap it
And
up
we have one more category.
right, because I
after
want to talk
this.
about herbs to help as
Yeah,
well. Okay?
we love herbs. We'll talk about herbs. Okay.
I'm going to make this short and sweet. Okay.
Yeah, interesting.
But when you have leaky gut, that's when you have inflammation in your gut lining, whether you knew it was there or not, which again can come from too much cortisol, too much alcohol, too much NSAIDs like ibuprofen. Okay. That can cause it. A bacterial infection like food poisoning can do it. Antibiotics can do it. Various toxins that we absorb in our food, air, and water can do it. So especially glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup and in many other now pesticides, herbicides that are being used extensively throughout the country and has been linked directly to causing damage to your gut lining and making your gut membranes more permeable or more open than they should be. So before I talked about leaky brain, when that layer of astrocyte cells becomes damaged by toxins and the fence posts are being pulled off, and there's holes for things to sneak through. Well, there's an interesting connection between leaky brain and leaky gut. Anytime you have leaky gut, it creates leaky brain. The two are intimately connected. And if you create that disturbance here, abnormal chemistry gets sent to the brain that does the same thing here. And it's a two-way street. If it affects here first and you develop leaky brain, it's then going to eventually create leaky gut. So if you have any kind of traumatic head injury, a concussion, right? Car accident where your head gets whipped around, right? That's going to always cause brain inflammation to some degree that can lead to this leaky brain. And when that does, it's going to affect you all the way down to your gut. And almost always you're going to notice that you not long after develop digestive issues going on.
Right when it happens, or it's something that's
Not
always
long
going to
after.
kind of,
Not long after.
it's always
right?
going to be there.
So if you don't do things to correct it, it can always be there, right?
Okay.
And it can get worse.
Interesting.
That's why really in the programs that I use on my Restore Your Health Online program that I do, my number one thing I do is deal with reducing cellular inflammation and gut inflammation. That's step number one more than anything.
Well, and I think it's becoming more and more common knowledge that there is that gut-brain connection. You know, you've known this for a long time, but it seems to be really gaining in popularity, and that's good.
Right. We're hearing a lot more about it.
Right.
The connection between how the gut and brain actually control each other so significantly. You know, we call this the first brain, we call the gut the second brain. Some actually debate that. They say they think more decisions are being made for how your body's run overall down in your gut, which then feeds information up to your brain, then your brain processes it. So it's obviously working together. But when we have any interference in this gut, point down here, gut-brain axis of these two, we're going to end up with something called leaky brain and eventually leaky gut. One will lead to the other, right? So disturbances in that will lead to not only brain fog, but you may start to notice digestive things as well, such as recurrent diarrhea or constipation, gas, bloating, right? A lot of upset down there in the GI system. Food sensitivities are a big one that can start to develop over time because this inflammation continues, right? So again, I could talk a lot more about that, which I won't because we got to get on to our next topic, but that's how that all ties together, right? So
at least we don't have commercial breaks.
What's that?
At least we don't have commercial breaks.
That's right. We would never get through this if we did, right?
No, it'd be I'm like, we'll be right back.
So I just want to say, when you develop leaky brain,
Yeah.
that affects not only your memory, but it affects your psyche and your emotional states. Okay.
Mhm.
Because it alters that neurochemistry. It leads to a biological impairment within your perception, your awareness, your emotional balance, and your state of mind. Right. So
Mhm.
sometimes people start getting angrier or have a short fuse, or like I said, anxiety, depression, but it can absolutely affect your emotional state. You can be sad. Different things can happen. All right. Enough of that. Let's get on to the last thing we want to talk about, which are herb boosting or brain boosting herbs, as I
Brain
should say.
boosting
Brain
herbs.
boosting herbs, right? So these are things that we can take that are known as nootropics. You may have heard of that word, right? Nootropics are another new thing that we're seeing a lot in the supplement world. It starts with NOO, right? So we can call it nootropics or nootropics, NOOTROPICS, nootropics. And what that is nutrients, and especially herbs, that are found to really influence brain function to improve things like memory and focus and alertness. Okay. And there's a couple that are really key. There's probably 5 that I can think off the top of my head that are really key to improving brain function. One of them is a mushroom called lion's mane, right? And you may have heard of that before, right? It might even be in some coffee that we drink, right?
I'm big shout out to Rise.
Right. So
I have been drinking the Rise coffee in the morning.
Rise is something we were just talking about, which is actually RYZE.
Yes.
And Rise coffee there are a number of different kinds like this. Like
I can't reach
Four
it. If I
Sigmatic is another
could,
one.
I would show it on. I should have done that. Yeah.
But there's coffees that can be blended with these medicinal mushrooms, right? So if you're gonna be having your cup of coffee in the morning anyway, why not cut down on some of the actual coffee and caffeine? Because the caffeine, if it's too much, can also cause a little brain issues. But replacing with some of these mushrooms can be extremely beneficial to brain function. Now, lion's mane is really kind of cool because it actually stimulates something called NGF, which is called nerve growth factor, right? So lion's mane stimulates nerve growth factor in your brain. So what it does is it plays a critical role in the maintenance and the health and regeneration of neurons in the brain. So as those neurons are breaking down, someone's trying to call me, all right? As those nerves are breaking down, lion's mane actually helps new nerve endings regrow fast, kind of like the laser does, right? So I think that's really, really kind of cool. And they found a high correlation between a lack of nerve growth factor or neural growth factor and dementia and Alzheimer's, right? Because as the cells are being damaged, new ones are not growing in as well. So lion's mane is one of those things that can help to rebuild the nerve networks to help with your brain and your body from the inside out. Okay.
MCT oil.
MCT oil, right? MCT oil, medium chain triglyceride oil.
Oh, for goodness sake. Okay.
Right.
That's what it is.
So MCT oil is one of the kinds of fatty acids. Remember we talked about the omega-3s, the fish oil. MCT oil is what we call brain fuel or high octane brain fuel.
Right? So it has your omega-3s?
No, it does not. So MCTs are different, right? They're another kind of fat.
All right.
That your brain cells can feed off of to produce energy very efficiently.
Okay.
Right. So MCT oil can help keep you sharp because if it can get in there properly, it's a really rich source of fuel, right? It's like high octane gas.
Okay.
Right? So that's where that comes in. I actually add some MCT oil to my coffee with these
Rise says it's in there.
Yep. And I actually add a little more. Right?
Okay.
But it is in there. You're correct. It's in the base of MCT oil. And if I'm just having a regular cup of coffee, I always add a little MCT oil to that if I'm making it at home because I always keep it handy. I put a dash of that in there, about a teaspoon, and just to try to keep my brain sharp and, lots of good energy throughout the day, right?
I've noticed a difference. I've been drinking it for 2 weeks.
Excellent.
I really can, because I was a little skeptic, I'm a little bit of a skeptic sometimes, but absolutely. I just feel better. Like my whole digestion feels better.
Absolutely. Because in that particular formula, like some of the other mushroom coffees, there's not just lion's mane. There's other things like chaga and cordyceps and different mushrooms that have different aspects of helping heal your body or increase your energy production. So these are good blends. Mushrooms can be very, very medicinal, right?
Thumbs up to the Rise.
Absolutely. All right. The next herb I want to talk about is rhodiola.
All right.
Now, rhodiola is part of a family of herbs that we call adaptogens.
Mm-hmm.
And adaptogens are, like their name sounds like, they help you adapt to stress. Okay.
Right.
And there are about 150 adaptogens, but there are some that are very well studied and more commonly found in adaptogenic herbal formulas. One of them is rhodiola, another one's ashwagandha, right?
Mm-hmm.
You may have heard that too. And part of what these do is they help to downregulate that cortisol response in your body. So if you're excessively stressed and the cortisol is up there and it's blocking that blood flow and affecting the sugar metabolism and causing damage to your thyroid hormone, ashwagandha can help bring that down. Rhodiola can help control that, right? So when we have prolonged exposure to chronic stress and chronic fatigue, rhodiola is one of those things that can help the cellular mechanisms to maintain the energy to deal with that. Okay. So it's going to kind of help keep the neurotransmitters back in balance, right? And keep things working more the way they're supposed to. All right. Let me move on so we don't run out of time. Next thing is,
well, it's 8:03, but we're going to keep going.
I'm wrapping it up.
We're wrapping it up.
I
asked too many questions tonight. That's what the problem is.
No, that's okay. And we actually did start about 5 minutes late. So I still got a couple minutes.
Okay, good.
So the next herb is called Gotu Kola, which is Gotu Kola. Gotu Kola, right? And what that does is it's actually correlated with and associated with increased intelligence and even psychic ability, right? Extracts from Gotu Kola have been shown to repair damaged neurons and promote, again, growth of new neural networks in the brain, right?
The magic of Gotu Kola. I'm looking at it right now.
It's interesting. You know how they say that what animal never forgets? Do you know? When you were a kid, you learn there's an animal that has the best memory.
Well, I have brain fog. I can't think of it.
So it's an animal with probably the biggest brain and the biggest ears and the biggest trunk.
Oh, an elephant. Yeah.
Right?
But you know, pigs don't forget either.
Right? We've always heard that. That's true, right? But we've always heard elephants have a great memory, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And an elephant that is treated a certain way by someone as an infant will remember that person as an adult. When they see them again, they'll remember right away, good or bad, who they were. They have a great memory. And actually in India, they say that elephants have such a great memory because a main part of their staple of their diet is a Gotu Kola leaf, right?
Really?
So it's interesting in that regard. Yogis in India have regard this as a longevity staple for people, right? But it's been shown that when you give Gotu Kola to people, it actually increases their IQ, right?
Really?
So, yeah.
But we can't get it at the Stop and Shop.
Well, you can get it at the vitamin shop, right?
Oh, yeah, and a supplement. But I mean, it would, you know, can we grow it?
Yeah, you probably wouldn't actually find the leaf here.
Yeah, it might be nice to kind of grow it.
But it's been found to actually help the hemispheres of the brain connect a little bit better.
Wow. Okay.
The next one's called ginkgo or ginkgo biloba, right? Now, I know you've probably heard of ginkgo, right?
Of course.
And actually, I have a ginkgo tree on my street right out here, right?
Do you?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So I call them stinko because the leaves don't smell very good, right? But ginkgo biloba boosts stem cell production in your brain and also improves blood flow to your brain. Okay. So this can produce a lot of improvement to damage to any improvement of cell repair from any damage that may have happened in your brain. All right. The last one I want to talk about is called Bacopa or Bacopa monnieri, or in India, it's called Brahmi, right? And Bacopa monnieri boosts your serotonin and dopamine levels again in the brain, right? So it's mood boosting, stress reducing, hormone regulating, right? So you'll find these herbs typically in these nootropic formulas. So if you went to the vitamin shop, you would and look up, they'll have a nootropic section now. And you'll see all this stuff we're talking about are usually found in these formulas because they're very commonly known to improve brain function this way. Now, there are other things I would recommend, but the list goes on. There's lots of things that can improve, but these are probably the most common ones. All right.
But you can help people with brain fog, can't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And how do they do that? If somebody wants your help with their brain fog?
Well, if they can remember, right?
Right.
The easiest thing is to reach out to me through my website at drwildcanhelp.com. And when you
Right.
go there, you'll see on the homepage, you'll see a big blue button that says book a free discovery call. And this is where we get to chat for 15 minutes, right? And we can do it through a Zoom call like this. We actually get to see each other and talk. I kind of like to see the person I'm talking to. But we can also do it by phone if we need to. And this is where you can explain a little bit to me about what you're experiencing, how long it's been going on, what you've been trying to do to help it. And I could tell you if I think you're missing any very important areas to look at there. And if there's anything I can help you with, I'd be happy to, right? So I do all kinds of specialized testing to look at inflammation in the body and look at toxicity in the body, these things that cause this in the first place. And then I, based on what I find, I put you on protocols to repair that inflammatory damage and to draw those toxins out both downstream and upstream, right? To make sure that we get everything out. Now, this is not a super fast process, right? It took a long time for these things to develop. And work with me takes a minimum of 3 months, more typically 6 months, right? To go through that process, but it's well worth it because we're actually repairing your body for long-term health span, long-term brain span, right?
Yeah. And Michael fixed my thyroid. Like really, the doctor had me scheduled for surgery and he told me don't. And I keep going back. They're like, no, it's fine. Isn't that amazing?
That's a tremendous joy for me to hear you say that.
Isn't that amazing?
Well, I think your body's amazing. And I think your body has the ability, innate, inherent, inborn ability to heal and repair.
Yeah.
And, as I always say, God doesn't make any junk, right? So your body has this incredible ability to heal and repair that you're born with. The problem is the world we live in beats it down. The choices we make are often pretty stupid. And we don't even realize that we're doing it half the time because no one's taught us different, right? And so we are pretty good at screwing up that innate healing mechanism. We create roadblocks to the healing. So my job is to find and remove those roadblocks and simply enable your body to heal the way it's supposed to again, right? Because my mantra, right? When you save your cells, you save yourself. Right? Yeah, that's really what it comes to.
Great guy right here. I encourage you 100%. If you want to talk with him, go to his website. He really, it's not going to be 15 minutes. It's probably going to be more like 25. And he's not like trying to sell you something. He's really trying to figure out what is wrong with you. And he gives you so many affordable options. I've been working with Michael forever and good human. He's got a dog in his lap. Come on.
I can't go anywhere without him. He's attached to me.
Come on. And then you also have a Facebook group.
Correct. It's called Restore Your Health Online.
Yeah.
Finally, a solution for frustrated sick people. Right.
And very active group. It pops up like all day. People are chatting on there.
And I put health tips on there every week.
Yeah.
There's cellular healing tips. And actually, today I talked about leaky brain causing food sensitivities. Right. Because I knew it was on my mind. Right. Because we were going to be doing this tonight. So I thought I would put that on there. And on Thursday, I'm going to drop a little video on there, just about 10, 15 minutes long to discuss more about that connection and how that works.
Very good, my friend. It's 8:11.
Time to sign off.
I know. It is time to sign off. But I'll see you next month.
You will.
All right. Is Knight over there too? I see Ralphie.
He is asleep on the floor right here.
All right, well, we're going to leave him quiet.
Yeah, he's the big boy with the deep voice, so we try not to get him stirred up.
Exactly.
Right?
Thank you, my friend.
You are welcome. I'm just thinking about next month, right? I didn't look at the calendar, but I know towards the no, I'll be back. Okay, I have to go.
You're going to Alaska, right?
I am going to Alaska for my to be with my daughter, who unfortunately is having leg surgery from a ski accident. But I'm going to be there to be by her side for that. So I will be back. I just wanted to just thinking about that.
I know you just thought about that. You're like, I don't know. It's fine. We can always move it around. It's cool.
All right. Well, I should be here next month. We'll see how that goes.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much.
All right. You have a wonderful evening. Thanks again for having me.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you again. I believe it's the second Tuesday. We have Seahorse Behavioral will be with us. And we are continuing our 3-part parenting series, Raising Good Humans. And we are on part 3, Failure to Launch. So that should be a good one. So we will see you in 2 weeks. It's 7 o'clock. We will be live. Hope you enjoyed this podcast.